Welcome to Their Future, Our Pod. I'm your host, Annie Andrews. I'm a pediatrician, a mom, and a former candidate for Congress. This is a pod mostly about politics, a lot about kids, but it's going to be about a lot of other stuff too. So thanks for joining. Their Future, Our Pod is an Arena production. The Arena is South Carolina's only progressive media company. They offer commentary, podcasts, interviews, and reporting, and a whole host of content about South Carolina politics and beyond. If you haven't already, please go to thearenasc.substack.com and subscribe. And please consider being a paid subscriber, which includes full access to all of our content for just $10 a month. Oh, someone's at the door. Well, hi, Michael O'Brien. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Thanks for joining me. Would you like to sit down?
Yeah, I mean, my little iced coffee.
Wonderful. Well, friends, this is very exciting because we have just been joined by one of my closest friends, Dr. Michael O'Brien. So welcome.
Hey, y'all.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me.
So for those of you who don't know Michael and I are both pediatricians, and we first met on Twitter. We started following each other on social media around the time I was considering running for Congress. Mm-hmm. And we developed one of those social media relationships that then translated beautifully to real life.
Yeah, and started with iced coffee in Mount Pleasant.
That's right.
And now we're back.
And here we are having iced coffee in Mount Pleasant again. But so Michael has been an incredible part of my advocacy journey, motivating me to keep going, giving me strength when I need strength. I think I could say that I've done the same for him.
Absolutely.
But as pediatricians, we both do this work because we care so much about our nation's children. But we're also political hobbyists. So we are very invested in staying tuned in to what's happening politically in South Carolina and beyond. And I think you would agree with me that everything that we care about in politics is because we care about kids.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so much of the advocacy that I've done has kind of fully formed after starting pediatrics residency. I mean, there were a couple of things that kind of caught my attention in medical school that made me concerned and got involved in some local level things, but it was really seeing children's issues being pushed to the wayside while working in a children's hospital and seeing all the ways that kids are impacted, all the things we could be doing to help kids. And then you turn on the news and you just see people fumble, like they're just talking about the craziest things you could imagine and spending all their time doing all these stunts. Mm-hmm. And meanwhile, kids are just, trying to live their lives.
Right. And I say often we don't have the luxury of looking away because our job is to be at the bedside of sick and injured children in some of the family's most vulnerable moments. And so while we do bottle a lot of that up because we have to, because we see it every day, it is impossible to see what we see in our jobs as pediatricians and not care.
Yeah.
And I think that the thing you and I both have in common is we see very clearly what the solution is, and the solution is political engagement on behalf of our nation's children.
Yeah, absolutely.
What is your first political memory, Michael O'Brien?
First political memory of like me personally being involved in something?
Sure. Or like the first time you watched an election or the first time you saw a candidate you cared about?
Well, I mean, truly the first thing that I remember, because I was in kindergarten for 9/11. Like that's the first thing that I remember that like had anything to do with something happening outside of my own personal life and seeing it on TV and all of the aftermath. So I feel like that was really a formative thing. And then personally, I don't know. I don't think I really got super personally invested in anything political until I was in medical school. And the local county council in Greenville, right in upstate South Carolina, tried to pass an ordinance stating that families who were LGBTQ or individuals who were LGBTQ weren't welcome to live, work, or raise families in Greenville County. Truly delightful stuff.
Wonderful.
Yeah. And so that's when I like really first got involved in anything like local politics. And then really just took off with residency. Like thankfully we have the American Academy of Pediatrics and some incredible groups that are working on child advocacy. But I think this is kind of the next step in the evolution of child advocacy is taking it from these amazing organizations that have the ability to put out recommendations and be able to do really great studies and put together really phenomenal information, but they're not really able to fight as hard on a political battlefield, which is ultimately where these decisions lie. And a lot of really great children's policy decisions die, essentially.
Right.
So their future PAC and getting involved with this, I feel like is the natural next step. Get some shit done.
That's right. Let's get some shit done for children.
Right.
And just to be clear, Michael just said he was in kindergarten for 9/11, and I was most certainly in college for 9/11. So we do have a diverse range of ages involved in this podcast. So just wanted to put that out there. It's interesting. My first political memory was not that early. I actually think I talk about this a lot, but it was the night Barack Obama was elected, and I was a resident. I was a pediatrics resident already. And it was the first time I really felt like a politician was speaking to me in a way that motivated me, in a way I could get excited about. But I was very apolitical for the first 20 plus years of my life. And, because I had the privilege to be apolitical, and I regret being so apolitical. But now that I've seen what I see and that I understand the key for children in this country is engaging politically. Like, I can't unsee it. I can't go back. I can't get up tomorrow and abandon this work, because the moment for our nation's children grows more urgent by the day. So we're going to have lots of time to talk about that. I'm excited Michael is here for our very first episode, because he's going to be joining frequently as a co-host, and also going to be filling in for me when I'm too busy to host. So sometimes it will be their future Our Pod with Annie Andrews with Michael O'Brien.
Amazing.
Okay.
And now that I know that there's video involved, I will have been clean shaven and wear much nicer clothes for it the next time. Sorry, Mom.
Yes, I should admit that I did not tell him there was video involved. So my bad. Okay. So we're going to play our first ever round of a game we invented called Brain Drain of the Week. Okay. So
yikes.
Some of you may know I like to use sarcasm to drive home important political policy points when people say stupid things, because so many of our elected officials, we will not call them leaders, embarrass us, right?
Yeah. And
so there is a plethora of stupid things people say that we could choose from any week. But so Brain Drain of the Week, I'm going to say a quote that someone could have either tweeted or said on TV this week, and you're going to guess who said it, and then we're going to talk about why it's so stupid. Okay?
Oh, God. Okay. I'm ready.
So I'm going to read this, so apologize.
Okay.
Okay.
Won't look.
So who said this? You can protect life and you can protect women. Abortion is still legal in this country. It may or may not be legal in your state, because it's up to the states now, but it's still legal. No one is preventing you from traveling somewhere else, vulnerable pregnant woman. Okay, so Michael, who said that?
I know exactly who said that, so I love that you picked this. That was nice.
Can bleep that part out. Yes, and of course, you are right. Ding, ding, ding. You got it correct. That is something, feminist icon, champion of women everywhere, Nancy Mace said on Newsmax this week.
Yeah. So to break it down, she basically was making the argument that it's not that big of a deal that Roe was overturned, because if you live in a state that banned abortion, you could just, take a flight or hop, skip, and a jump on a train, or, because America has such great, cheap infrastructure. That was sarcasm. That you could just go somewhere else.
Right. It's easy as that.
Easy as that. Imagine.
All women have access to the resources necessary in this vulnerable, often highly emotional state to identify a women's reproductive health clinic in another state, find the means to travel there. Many of these women have their own children and families and jobs. But sure, thank you, Nancy. They will just hop on a flight, hop on a train, and go receive their healthcare somewhere else. Because, of course, women's rights in this country should vary based on your because, of course, women's rights in this country should vary based on your, I can't say the word.
You're good.
Because, of course, women's rights on this country should be dependent on your current latitude and longitude, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's nuts. She constantly walks this fine line. Well, she thinks she's walking a fine line. She's actually tripping over it constantly. Where she says things like, how many times has she said, we need to prove to women that the GOP doesn't hate them? But then she goes ahead and supports policies that actively harm women and their children. So I don't know. I think she thinks that she's following the political winds, but if you pay attention to her for more than a week at a time, you see the flip-flop. And unfortunately, I think people usually only tune in for a headline or two. So I think a lot of people don't see it. But it's pretty glaringly obvious.
Yes. For those of us who are unfortunately incredibly dialed into the inner workings of Nancy Mace's political career, we can see it very plainly. You talked about her record on women. She voted against the Violence Against Women Act. She co-sponsored Marjorie Taylor Greene's personhood bill when she got to Congress. And the personhood bill is a bill that would outlaw IVF. She helped to write and voted for South Carolina's 6-week abortion ban that then went into effect when Roe fell. Roe fell the summer I was running against her, and she was incredibly celebratory in that moment. She has since scrubbed her website of any notion that she ever celebrated that Roe fell. So it's a perfect example of a politician who will say whatever needs to be said at any given moment if it benefits her politically. And as a woman, it is incredibly offensive that then she tries to claim that she is some type of champion for women or setting her party straight on issues that matter to women. So it is incredibly offensive, but she, of course, benefits from partisan gerrymandering, which is ripping our democracy apart. And she can do these things and say these things and very likely just continue to get reelected.
Yeah, there's just no consequences. And in the meantime, we have the reality of abortion care in America now that Dobbs is the, unfortunately, law of the land and Roe has fallen, which the reality is that there are plenty of states across America that have no access to abortion care, whether it's from a complete total ban all the way through 12-week bans. I mean, those kinds of restrictions all have a serious impact on abortion care and women's rights.
Yes. And so I did a little bit of digging to prepare for today, and I found that 171,000 women traveled for abortion in 2023 that we know of. And this is double the number of women who traveled for abortion in 2019. So an incredibly powerful impact on women's access to reproductive health care. And just in Texas, 35,500 traveled from Texas to other states in 2023 compared to 2,400 in 2019. So scales, exponential amounts of women who have had to leave their state. And you and I know some women who've experienced this in our own state of South Carolina, heartbreaking stories of women who had wanted pregnancies, found out that the fetus had, conditions that were incompatible with life outside of the uterus. And in that moment of profound grief, had to also figure out how to travel out of state to receive the medical care that was indicated and recommended by their doctors.
Yeah. And we know for a fact that multiple of those women have shared their personal story with Nancy Mace.
Exactly.
Who then has the audacity to make these statements on Newsmax.
Just this week.
I mean, it's terrible.
Yes.
It's really terrible.
Yes. I have a feeling in this new game of ours, Brain Drain of the Week, we will be talking about Nancy Mace again.
It's really unfortunate.
Sorry. Feel free to drop a comment wherever people can drop comments on this. If you want us to talk less about Nancy Mace, we'll try.
Well, and the other thing that I saw, related to how much of an impact this has, I saw Rachel Vindman, who's awesome. She commented on this clip of Nancy Mace, and she attached this data from Idaho, from a private hospital in Idaho that provides OBGYN services, that in 2023, for the entire year of 2023, they had to life flight, which for anyone who doesn't know is like helicopter out to a different hospital. They had to use life flight once for a pregnant woman the entire year. In the first 3 months of 2024, that number was 6. 6 women. Not because women are sicker, because they are not legally allowed to, or they are legally terrified to, care for sick pregnant women because of these abortion laws. I mean, to show up to your doctor that you trust in crisis, worried about your pregnancy, and they have to ship you out to Washington State or Oregon, that's horrifying.
Right. And if for some reason you don't care about those women, or that doesn't speak to you, it's a complete inappropriate allocation of medical resources. Like, those medical resources should not be used to fly women to a state where they're allowed to get medically necessary care. Like, it's crazy. So imagine that, your child experiences a trauma, but the life flight helicopter is occupied because of your state government's decision that is intrusive into, the exam room. All of a sudden, your kid can't be life flighted to the pediatric trauma center because the helicopter is busy carrying a pregnant woman to a state where they actually care about women.
Yeah, when she could have gotten her care right at home.
Right.
Like she had since the 1970s.
Right. Whew. Anyways, okay.
All right, well, look at me.
I got a little
heated.
I got a little intense.
Wow. All right.
Okay. So we're going to shift to a lighter subject, which is the multiple urgent crises that children in this country face. Something really lighthearted.
So light and feathery. Amazing.
Okay. So I talked about this at the beginning, which sort of my evolution in advocacy and now politics, which is, when I ran for Congress, one reason I ran was because I detest Nancy Mace. Another reason I ran is because I believe so deeply that we need people like us who wake up every day to help children. We need more people like us at elected positions at all levels. Mm-hmm. We need more serious people who are driven just to do the right thing and aren't just trying to promote their own career. But I really ran to give children a voice in Washington, D.C. Now, I should give a shout out to the 2 pediatricians who currently are in Congress, Dr. Kim Schreier from Washington 8, Dr. Yadira Caraveo from Colorado 8, both incredible, incredible women, pediatricians who realize that what our children need is political activation on their behalf.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the night I lost, I knew that this journey was just beginning, and you and I had met in person, I believe. Yes. But I knew you're going to be part of this from the beginning. And, I took a trip to the mountains, did some soul searching, went on some hikes, listened to some music, and really thought about what the next step was going to be. And how do we fix this problem? And ultimately, what I decided to do is to launch our nation's first and only political action committee for children. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so you've been alongside of me the whole journey. This was about a year ago. And I have found myself spending a lot of time explaining why this is so necessary. And because I'm tired of hearing myself explain it, I would like for you to give it a shot and help people understand why we have to go beyond the walls of what the AAP can do, why we have to go beyond our annual white coat day at state capitals or in Washington, D.C., why that just is not cutting it for children.
Yeah, I'll give it my best shot. I mean, on the spot, y'all, this is organic. So the way that child policy is prioritized in Washington, D.C. and around the country right now is that it is not prioritized. It is usually the last thing that anybody thinks about. Most of the things that impact kids, especially when you think about public resources, SNAP, food stamps, education, and Medicaid, a lot of those things end up in these gigantic bills that are not specific to kids. They go in as earmarks. A lot of things happen behind the scenes very quietly. And you don't get a lot of the big policy discussion that you see with other issues that are, I don't know, a little spicier and make the big headlines.
That's right.
Right? And so there are incredible groups out there that have been working for decades to try to have more impact. I mean, look at the American Academy of Pediatrics. They have a huge presence in DC. But legally, since they're not a political action committee, they have limited ability to get involved in races, to get involved in some of the more specific policy battles that really impact kids. So the purpose of having a PAC that's dedicated to kids is to push that fight to the next level. You can take money, which unfortunately in America is the source of so much political power and capital. But with a PAC dedicated to kids, you can take money and you can fight back right on the doorstep of some of these politicians who are being terrible to children, either doing nothing for them or actively trying to harm them.
Right.
And you can go kick their butt.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. You said it beautifully. In American politics, money talks. And until someone like us shows up in Washington, D.C. every election cycle or in state capitals all around this country with a checkbook, able to support candidates, to run TV ads showing how bad their opponents are on issues that matter to children, until that happens, it's going to continue to be a feel-good sport with dire consequences for our nation's children.
Absolutely.
I think one way to quantify sort of the huge gap that exists is to think about the AARP. The AARP is an incredibly politically powerful organization. It is a household name. Their legislative agenda is almost always what we read about in the headlines on the front of our lawmakers' minds at any given moment. And to quantify that, in 2023, the AARP spent $16.5 million lobbying.
Wow.
Compare that to the AAP, the American Academy of Pediatrics, which is not built to do the same thing as the AARP, but it's the closest thing our kids have.
Yeah, and they're busy doing so much other amazing stuff for pediatricians.
Right. They spent under $1 million in 2023. So the youth of this country are just getting left behind, but that is how the system is designed. Like, we are not going to get different results for our children until we flip this whole thing on its head and build a political movement that actually centers our children, lifting up candidates who are brave enough to talk about kids on the campaign trail. Because I know, as someone who ran for Congress, I ran at the federal level, I know that there are very few and far between political consultants who are going to encourage candidates to talk more about kids, because children are not seen as a powerful political constituency in this country. And then the most cynical people will say, well, of course they're not, Annie. It's because they don't have money and they can't vote. Well, so then it's on us, right, to be their voice. And we have to just, I think as pediatricians and doctors in general, we think we need to be apolitical. We think our duty is at the bedside. We need to treat and heal sick and injured children and just go from hospital bed to hospital bed, or exam room to exam room, but that's not going to get the job done efficiently or effectively. We have to push the boundaries, push ourselves outside of our comfort zone. And as someone put it to me back when I was trying to conceptualize what this organization should be, they said, we need someone who's willing to throw sharp elbows on behalf of children in Washington, D.C. And I think that's exactly what we are planning to do. And I think that no one is better prepared to do that than the two of us and the rest of our team at their Future PAC.
Sharpen up these elbows.
That's right. I will throw a sharp elbow.
For kids. For the kids.
For the kids. Hashtag for the kids.
Hashtag for the kids.
So we're going to have a lot of time to talk about why this matters so much. So I think we're just trying to lay the groundwork. But this is the first time our country has ever someone in this country has ever attempted to do something, to build a national organization that is meant to give political power to children and a children or kids first agenda, as we have been calling it. So this is our first election cycle. I want people to learn more about the work that we're doing together with our team. And to do that, they can go to theirfuturepac.org or theirfutureourvote.org. You can see what our kids first agenda is, which I would argue could be called common sense things. Because who can argue with affordable, accessible healthcare, strengthening our public education system, addressing climate change, addressing the gun violence crisis? Like, these are common sense things that if you talk to individuals about each issue, I think they would be hard pressed to say that they don't agree with that.
Yeah, I think that's right.
But until now, no one is creating sort of a cohesive messaging strategy about what it looks like to be a Kids First candidate. And that's what we're trying to do.
Right. And I think the other thing is, just to add to the consultants who say, well, kids can't vote and kids don't have money. I mean, I'm in this fight. I'm a childless gay man, but happen to be a pediatrician, but also an avid former child. I think most people remember what it was like to be a child and can empathize with today's kids. I mean, I think you'd be hard pressed to find an adult American who isn't worried about today's youth.
That's right.
On either side of the aisle.
I agree.
So I think the consultants are wrong. I think there's a big population of parents and childless former children.
So if you know a child or have ever been a child, this is the organization for you.
Precisely. I love it.
Okay. I think that's good. We will circle back to that many, many times.
Yeah.
Hopefully more than we circle back to our friend Nancy.
Yeah. Dear God.
Okay. So now we are going to end with a game that I have played with my children some. Not really a game. That I've played with my children some. I wish I did it more often, but my life is incredibly chaotic. But some of you moms, parents out there probably do this every evening around the dinner table after you've cooked a delicious, nutritious meal. But it's called Highs and Lows.
Okay.
And I think it's a really good way for you to stay connected to the people in your immediate family, to really hear about how their day went. And I'm going to start doing this again because now I have a preteen in my family and I want to be sure I stay connected to what's going on in her life. So Highs and Lows, I want you to tell me what this week got you excited in a good way, made you hopeful. That's your high. Let's start with lows and then end on the high note. And then your low, of course, is something that got you pissed off or motivated you to keep going in this work. So give me your low for the week first, and then give me your high and I'll give you mine.
Okay. For the low, the other day I saw something was shared from our friends at First Focus. First Focus for Kids, Bruce Leslie, super cool dude, cool organization. And they shared a screenshot from Project 2025, which is like the kind of conservative plan for the future should Trump win. And that was a plan to cut Head Start, which for any pediatrician listening or parent listening, you probably know exactly what Head Start is. It's basically a preschool program for kids 4 and up that is federally funded. So it helps low-income kids get a preschool education, which is also like a daycare labor issue. So it's super important for kids and families.
Now, is access to quality early childhood education evidence-based, Michael?
Yeah, it's very evidence-based. Talk about something that the American Academy of Pediatrics has done. There's a ton of evidence supporting early childhood education for further development. I mean, kids who have access to something like Head Start versus kids who don't have a massive advantage when they get to kindergarten. Right. And that is your setup for life.
Yes.
That's your setup for life.
That is the foundation.
Rip Head Start, rip that rug out from under America's lowest income families, and you're just widening every gap, at the education gap, financial gap. I mean, that's a terrible policy decision.
Yes.
So yeah, that got me fired up.
Yes. I saw the screenshot from Project 2025, which I've tried to read part of Project 2025. Oof. It's overwhelming. It's hard to digest. It's long. It's ominous. It's terrifying. But just seeing in writing that someone like thought that this was a good idea, like, I'm just going to type out our federal plan to eliminate Head Start. Like, I cannot think of anything more cynical or craven to just, like you said, just rip that rug right out from under our nation's most vulnerable youth.
Yeah.
It's terrifying. It's disgusting. I hope every pediatrician listening hears what we're saying and understands that literally everything is at stake this November.
Yeah.
It's a perfect example.
I love Head Start.
I love Head Start. Who doesn't love Head Start? We're going to also like rip all the fruits and vegetables out of children's homes while we're at it, I think.
Oh my God. I don't even want to know what they've got in store next. So
Tear down existing public playgrounds.
Yeah,
I think that was the bullet point underneath the Head Start.
So let's just not let them get to that point, and then we don't have to find out what's next.
That's right. Okay. That is a very good high. Now tell me your low. No.
That was my low. I don't get lower than that this week.
That was a very good low. Now please tell me your high, Michael.
Okay, and then high, I would say the incredibly rare occurrence that the Supreme Court didn't do something awful.
Yes, I'm glad you brought this up. Yes, shocking news out of the Supreme Court this week.
So for anyone who doesn't know, the Supreme Court came to this decision this week. Essentially, this is really paring it down, but stating that domestic abusers do not have a constitutional right to own guns.
Yes.
Sounds great to me.
Yes. Again, sensible things.
Yeah. I
mean, should never have gone to the Supreme Court, but...
Yeah. And it was overturned from the Fifth Circuit. So the Fifth Circuit said, yeah, domestic abusers have a constitutional right to own firearms.
Right. Because I'm sure that's what the framers of the Constitution had in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. When they said well-regulated militia to defend against tyranny, they thought, we definitely want an angry boyfriend to go after a woman.
Right.
Yep. Definitely what they were thinking.
Yes.
And of course, this was an 8-1 decision, like almost unanimous, which is incredible. So in my opinion, that is a high. That's a great Supreme Court decision. You'll never guess who the dissenting justice was.
Oh, who was it, Michael?
Clarence Thomas.
Oh.
Shocking. Shocking.
Everyone's favorite Supreme Court justice. I mean, it's hard to imagine being the one in that decision. It's really disgusting that we're even discussing a domestic abuser, like who's been found through judicial due process to be a domestic abuser, that they should be allowed to be armed. Because domestic violence against women is a huge problem in this country.
And in the United States, and particularly in our state here in South Carolina, the rate at which women are shot in domestic disputes is astronomical. Like, it's incomparable to any other nation. And for our state, it's hardly comparable to our nation.
Right.
So, I mean, it's a serious issue.
Right.
And I think we have both seen children who have been shot in domestic disputes at home.
Yes.
And I mean, just the idea that anyone would defend someone to have the right to be put in that situation is
incomprehensible.
Yeah. I don't even know if I have more words for it.
I think, yes. And so I agree. And because I made the rules for this game, I had my answers prepared ahead of time, and you just stole my high.
Oh.
You just stole my high.
I took the low-hanging fruit.
You did. But this was, I've done a lot of work in gun violence prevention. It's really the issue that brought me into the fold. I got involved and got off the sidelines after the Parkland shooting when I was worried about my own children. I joined Moms Demand Action, and really in that organization found my voice. And it's what gave me the strength to do everything I've done since then. But so it's, as a gun violence prevention advocate in the South and a pediatrician in the South, it's very rare that we have wins.
Yeah.
And so I think this is a moment that all of you who do work in this space, in the gun violence prevention space, need to really savor this moment, because if this decision had come down in the other direction, the domino effect of that would have been devastating for women and children all across this country. And so I think even with our deeply politicized Supreme Court, I feel really excited and grateful that they made the decision that they made. And this is the Rahimi case. I don't think we've named the case, but so if folks want to go read more about it. But yes, huge high for those of us who have common sense and also care about our nation's women and children.
Yeah. And huge plug for Moms Demand for being such a massive force.
Yes.
I mean, without them, I don't think we would have decisions like this going the right way.
Yes. I mean, every town.
Big trouble.
That's right. And I think it's important. I think that the playbook from Everytown and Moms Demand Action on the issue of gun violence, they found a way to translate a political issue into something that your average voter, mom, parent, person who cares about children can understand and can feel like it is accessible to them. And that's exactly what happened to me. Parkland happened. I was a mom. I was pissed off and I looked for an organization I could join and they existed. And I'm so grateful for that. But they did a great job of taking this big sort of third rail political issue and boiling it down into a way that activated women and other people all across this country. And they are bigger and stronger than the NRA.
Yeah.
And that time, and I'm sure we'll talk a ton about gun violence prevention on this podcast, but to me, that's the playbook that we're trying to follow with their future PAC, which is there are women across the street here in my neighborhood. There are women everywhere who are, and I keep saying women, I shouldn't just say women. There are people everywhere who care deeply about our gun violence crisis, our youth mental health crisis, what's happening to our climate, are our grandchildren going to be able to enjoy the beaches, who care deeply about these issues, but they don't yet connect it to the way that they vote. And I think that if we can follow in the footsteps of organizations like Everytown and Moms Demand Action and make politics feel relevant and accessible to worried parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles all across the country, then we will be successful and we will get our lawmakers to finally be on the right side of these issues that matter so much to our children. Wow, I just got on a soapbox.
Woo, preach. Okay.
This counts as your church for the weekend, Michael. Okay. But that was my high also. So I was allowed to get on my soapbox. Okay. I don't want to end on my low, so we'll figure out a more uplifting way to end. But I will share my low
later. Oh, okay. Deal.
So my low came out of the great state of Louisiana.
Oh, yeah.
Where the governor, whose name I don't even remember because I don't consider him relevant to my life in any way, shape, or form, he decided that it was a good idea to require public school classrooms to post the 10 Commandments. The 10 Commandments in public school classrooms, even though we are a nation that was founded on the principle of separation of church and state. I believe my first grader probably knows that.
Yeah.
But apparently Republicans in Louisiana do not.
Yeah. Other than it just being blatantly wrong and unconstitutional, it's like, where are the priorities that these state lawmakers and the governor in Louisiana have? Like, where are their priorities? I mean, you made a video where you said, where are we going to put the 10 Commandments? Right between the Stop the Bleed kit and what was the other one?
The live tracker of school lunch debt.
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, come on. We've got kids who are being shot at school, who are going through terrifying lockdown drills and being traumatized in kindergarten, and being taught to stop the bleed just in case somebody comes into their classroom and shoots their friends. And we have a huge lunch debt crisis where kids are going hungry in American schools in many states just because they are no longer being served lunches if their lunch debt gets too high or isn't paid off fast enough. And that's just two of so many public education issues that are almost peripheral to public education. So there is just such a long list of things that they could be doing instead of throwing up the 10 Commandments on the wall.
Right.
It's weird.
Yes. I think that's actually important to point out that it's just weird and unconstitutional, helpful to no child in America.
Yeah.
And it'd be one thing. I mean, it'd still be unconstitutional and weird and wrong, but it'd be one thing if our children were thriving. I don't have the statistics about Louisiana's children in front of me, but I can guarantee there are very high rates of youth gun violence, very high rates of food insecurity, of mental health issues.
It's very similar to our state.
Yes.
Very similar.
That is the vibe. I mean, I'm a little worried we're going to be getting a 10 Commandment bill in the South Carolina state legislature.
Yeah. Somebody already said that they're going to work on that, but I'm not even going to give them a name.
That's great. So that to me is a shining example of what a kid's last politician would do. Someone whose least important priority is what's actually beneficial to our nation's children, because nobody who has any idea what our children are facing or what our children would need would be able to tell you with a straight face that hanging the 10 commandments on a classroom wall is going to benefit a single child in that classroom.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's bizarre and it's terrible.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope that this doesn't spread across other red states.
Yeah, and you really have to stop and remind yourself in today's politics, where the Freedom Caucus has become such a big thing, and you've got your Boeberts and MTGs,
Mm-hmm.
to like stop and remind yourself, this is not normal.
Mm-hmm.
That is a weird bill.
Right. So the answer
Yeah.
is to mobilize people who care about kids politically.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we're trying to do. And I hope that conversations like this can help people see that our two choices this November up and down the ballot are not the same as the two choices our parents had 30 years
Mm-hmm.
ago when they went to vote.
Yep.
The stakes are so high. Our nation's children are facing multiple unprecedented crises, and we are desperate for leaders who will prioritize our children's needs. Now, we didn't say this at the beginning, but I get accused and you get accused all the time of using children for politics.
Mm-hmm.
And I get so offended by that as a pediatrician and a mom of 3 kids, because the only reason I actually care about politics is because of kids. And what I'm trying to do and what you're trying to do with me is the exact opposite, which is to use politics for children. Because the reason that guy in Louisiana will very likely get reelected if he runs again is because there is no one with political power pushing back against him on behalf of children.
Yeah.
And that's got to stop. Like, we have to. This is so hard to build what we're trying to build from the ground up, but like, we have not a moment to waste.
Right. And so you're using politics for kids. The 10 Commandments bill in Louisiana is the perfect example of the complete opposite.
Yes.
Using kids for politics.
Right.
That's what's wrong.
Right.
That's the opposite of what we're doing.
Right.
So let's get to it.
Yeah. So please join us.
Yeah.
Our kids cannot wait.
That.
What can we say that's uplifting? Because that was super depressing.
Uplifting.
Da, 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 da. Here's what we're going to say. All right. So I think we've done a really good job of highlighting things that are not going well for kids in this country. But the silver lining, the good news is we are on a mission to flip this around, to give children a voice, to create a political constituency, a powerful political constituency that is centered on our nation's youth. We cannot do it alone. We need people to join us. theirfuturepac.org. Subscribe to the Arena SC Substack to hear more from us about these issues. Find a way to get involved, find a way to get off the sidelines, especially for you pediatricians out there. We cannot afford to be apolitical, push the boundaries, take risks. Our children are worth it.
There is no bigger coalition than the coalition of people who used to be kids.
I think that is mathematically accurate.
Right?
Yes.
So like, let's do this.
Yes.
We can change stuff.
Yes. All right.
Okay.
Well, I think this was a success. We'll see. I
think
guarantee
so.
both of our mothers are going to listen to this podcast and
100%.
be filled with pride.
God, I hope so.
I hope they text it to our aunts as well.
Oh, 100%.
So thank you so much for joining us for our first episode of Their Future, our pod, and we'll see you next time.
See y'all.